So I already have a Callaloo recipe video on the channel, but all you're walking up to me in public now and identifying me as the man who was cooking Callaloo on Wiens' channel. So I figure in as much as that is the case, let me do an updated video on my Callaloo recipe. So yes, I have my basic ingredients here. How I like to make Callaloo, very basic ingredients, but it's all in the technique. So of course, you know, I have my little Callaloo bush, bundle of bush. I have some pimentos. I have a Scotch bonnet pepper, my onion, my garlic, okras, pumpkin. I like to add a little bit of ruku in my Callaloo. And the only ingredient that I would say not so traditional that I use as a staple in my Callaloo is rosemary. And the only reason I did not use it in Mark's video is because I know Ole like bacchanal. And if I had used rosemary in making my Callaloo on Mark's video, all the other be in the comments saying, that is not how you just make Callaloo, who just make Callaloo like that, and all kind of thing. And really, you know, troll the man video with all kind of negative comments. So instead, I'm showing you how I just make my Callaloo. My Callaloo just tastes real best. And I'm assuring you that if you swap out the bundle of chive or the shadow benny that you might typically use in your Callaloo and use rosemary, you will not be disappointed. Rosemary is an amazing herb to use in a Callaloo. But Callaloo for me is not just about the ingredients, it's also about the technique. So let me jump into it and I'll show you how, you know, I make my Callaloo and the little tips and tricks that I incorporate into my Callaloo recipe to make it come out real best. Now, of course, the main ingredient in Callaloo is Callaloo bush. And when you're picking out a Callaloo bush in the market, you definitely want to go for young bush. You don't want to go for no old bush. So Alpha would have explained in his video that I did with him that what you're picking when you're picking bush is the center leaf.
We are no man-made roll bush thing here. This
No
is natural, pencil roll thing here. This is natural roll.
Yeah.
So looking for a center leaf that higher low roll on it.
Right.
And all you do is that you pull him up.
Okay.
You pull him up like this. You put your thumb on it so.
Right.
And you pull him up.
Okay.
And you pull him up. Easy.
There's a little technique in it.
A little technique in it, but you know, by the time you finish here in 2 minutes, you're going to be an expert. Don't worry yourself.
I like to go by one particular vendor, and when I go by her, a young lady in Central Market, sure to get some nice young bush when I go by her. She don't ever sell no old bush. It is be the nice center leaf, young bush, so I know this gonna cook real good. I like to go for these smaller bundles. I know that this is some nice young Callaloo bush leaves, so this is why I like to use in my Callaloo bush. The next important thing in preparing the Callaloo is breaking down the ingredients and preparing the Callaloo bush. So one of the things that you have to do, and I doing this since I was small, is picking the bush, and that's literally holding it from between the base of the leaf and the top of the stem, like so, and then just pulling that off like that. And that's it. The base of the leaf here and the top of the stem, you're just going to pull it in the opposite direction to where it's growing. So as you see, it's pointing in this direction and growing this way. You're just holding it and snapping it back like that and pulling off the leaf off of the stem. So the other part in prepping the Callaloo bush, and one of the things that I definitely had to do when I was growing up, was removing this outer skin off of the stalk. Now, yes, that's what I learned growing up, but you know, in doing my own research and just refining the way in which I make my Callaloo, I've learned that there are a lot of nutrients in this outer skin. And of course, you know, Callaloo is a nutritious meal and you want to keep as much nutrients in the dish as possible. So I no longer remove this outer skin. I keep it on because again, I want to keep this as nutritious as possible. Now, some people say that if you don't remove this outer skin, the Callaloo will scratch your tongue when you finish cooking it. That has not been my experience. I, you know, do this all the time. I just cut up my stalks and I cook them with the rest of the ingredients. And I have never had the experience of eating a Callaloo that I have made where it is scratching my tongue. I have any kind of reaction to it. So I like to get a few of the stalks in a bunch. So I kind of line up the ends like this. and cut the ends off. And the thing about preparing the bush and the other ingredients for callaloo is that because I'm not using a blender, because of course, you know, swizzle stick is the way, I like to cut up the ingredients as fine as possible, as thinly as possible. That way they cook and they break down much easier. It's less cooking time, it's more even cooking on the ingredients. You have everything breaking down and coming together nicely. And it's less work in terms of swizzling to bring it together into that final consistency that, you know, we know callaloo to have. So if you take your time and prep your ingredients up front, it will save you a lot of work, a lot of elbow grease in the final stages of this dish. So the next thing you want to do is prepare the leaves, and this is a technique that I learned from watching Chef Khalid Mohammed make callaloo. A great way to prep the leaves is to place them flat like this, and you want to stack them together. Now it's a little more meticulous, but trust me, the results that you're going to get from preparing the ingredients like this, it really enhances the final outcome of your callaloo. So shout out to Khalid for that tip or that trick, because it really was a game changer in the preparation of my callaloo. And fun fact, back in 2019, we had a little get together for International Chef's Day at Fanatic Kitchen Studio, and I made a callaloo for that line. It was kind of like, you know, just doing something to celebrate some of the local chefs here in Trinidad. And when Khalid tasted it, he was like, hey, this tasting real good, boy. And, you know, he asked me how I make it and, you know, some of the things that I put in it and thing. And for me, just, you know, getting that kind of response from somebody like Khalid, who, of course, is a well-renowned and well-respected chef in the culinary scene here in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, just to have that kind of response from somebody with, you know, his career and his skill level and knowledge and that kind of thing, that was a good thing for me, because it was like, yeah, I feel like I'm doing something right then. So, yeah, shout out to Chef Khalid, and of course to all the other chefs in Trinidad and Tobago who help shape our culinary landscape. So, when you finish, stack the leaves together. You want to roll them into a bundle like this, a tight bundle. Then what you want to do is cut them into very thin strips, like so. And again, little extra steps, but trust and believe, this makes a huge difference in the cooking process and the final outcome of your callaloo. And as you can see here, is very thin strips of bush that we end up with. And of course you could tell something like this will break down quite easily in the cooking process. Another essential ingredient for me in callaloo is pumpkin. Pumpkin gives the callaloo a bit of body, but it also adds a layer of sweetness to the callaloo. And for me, the perfect callaloo has a nice blend of sweet, savory, and spiciness to it. Using one whole onion. And of course, you want to do a very fine dice on your onions, in keeping with the theme of making sure that we prep each ingredient very intentionally. Of course, garlic is a must, so I'm mincing a couple cloves. And for me, pimentos are important to a callaloo, but they're not essential. Like, I've made callaloo already with all pimentos and I didn't miss it. But I mean, if you have them, definitely use them. But if you don't worry about it. Your callaloo will still taste great if you don't use pimentos. I like my callaloo spicy, so I definitely like to use a Scotch bonnet pepper in there. I don't mind a spicy callaloo, so half of a Scotch bonnet pepper, seeds and everything. That'll give me a nice little kick. And the other ingredient that is as essential to callaloo as callaloo bush, of course, is okra. So I like to line a few of them up in a bunch like this, cut the tops off, and then just give them a thin slice. You know, okra does add that sliminess to the callaloo, and for me, what is a callaloo without the sliminess? Like, that is part of the, you know, whole callaloo experience, to have that nice kind of gooey, slimy texture. Yeah, that is callaloo. Callaloo can't be no thin, smooth thing. It had to have that kind of gloopiness to it. The last ingredient that I have to prep, and definitely the most contentious one, is the rosemary. Yes, I know that you're accustomed with your shadow benny and your chive and your thyme and thing, the little bundle of chive that you just get in the market. Yes, I know you're accustomed using that. I grew up using that as well in callaloo. Like, I grew up seeing my mother and my grandmother using that. But I mean, with all things, you learn some things and then you either stick to it, or if you find a way to improve on it, you improve on it, and you're not afraid to move away from what you know as tradition. I mean, it's food is an evolving thing, so allow the thing to evolve. Don't beat up, don't fight the thing. Trust me, I know what I'm telling you. Rosemary instead of shadow benny, instead of chive, is the perfect herb for callaloo. Don't fight me on this. Just try it. You want to make sure to cut this as fine as possible. You don't want that to be a texture that you're getting in the final dish. So try to mince this as fine as you can. So now that we have our ingredients prepped, we start to cook this thing. So the first step in cooking our callaloo is sauteing the vegetables. Now, some people get up in arms for this part of the cooking process. But let me tell you something. If you know anything about cooking, you would know that this is a crucial and integral part of cooking anything that involves, you know, vegetables and building flavor. And I'll get deeper into it in another video, but trust me, in this one, if you want the best results, the best tasting callaloo that you could create, you must saute your veggies. You just have to. So we add in the veggies into our pot with some oil. And now you want to add some salt. So the reason for adding salt at this point is that the salt extracts the water content out of the vegetables. So you don't want to skip this step. You don't want to just throw the vegetables into the pot with liquid. Again, you want to extract the most flavor out of the veggies. You want to create the most flavorful callaloo that we can. So sweating the vegetables, adding the salt, extracting the water content out of the vegetables and cooking them down is the most efficient way of building flavor and making sure that, you know, we have the best outcome that we can have, the most flavorable outcome. So we want to allow this to cook for about 5 to 8 minutes on medium heat. I'm going to cover this and allow the veggies to continue to sweat, and we'll check back on it in about 5 to 8 minutes. 8 minutes later, this is what we're looking like. As you can see, the veggies already start to break down. The okra start to break down as well. And if the smell that you're getting from this is any indication of how this is going to taste, which of course it is, then trust me, we are on our way to a very, very flavorful callaloo. So I add in my rosemary to the pot now. Going to add our bush, the leaves, and continuing in the same trend of not adding any liquid to this at this point and allowing the veggies to continue cooking and sweating. We're going to cover this down for another 8 to 10 minutes and allow the leaves now to continue to cook with the veggies, and that is of course going to break down the leaves further into the pot with the other veggies, and all the ingredients in there will continue to commingle and lend the flavor to each other. Trust me, this is going to come together real nice. So trust the process, allow this to cook down for another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll add our coconut milk. All right, so another 8 minutes has passed and we looking good. We well on our way to our real best callaloo. Another thing you want to make sure to do is all the bits that stuck to the bottom there, all of this here, you want to scrape it and incorporate that back into the callaloo, because there's great flavor there. That's what they call the fond. So you want to scrape that off, get that incorporated back into the dish. So at this point you want to increase your flame up to medium-high heat. I'm going to add our coconut milk. I also like to add about a tablespoon of ruku. It's optional, but I find it's give it a real nice earthy flavor. So a little ruku up in there, real good. If you can't put your hands on ruku, the liquid extract, you could use annatto powder as well. If you can't find annatto powder by itself, you could use Sazon seasoning that has the annatto in it as the main ingredients. And at this point, you could taste for salt and adjust. So I'm going to add some more salt to taste. Also going to add some black pepper. So as this has come to a boil, what we want to do now is cover it and allow it to cook for 30 minutes. Half an hour later, and this is how we look in here. And we are done. Our callaloo's definitely finished cooking. And how can I tell? Seeing the color on the okra seeds, fully pink, almost turning kind of pinkish brownish in color. We know for sure our callaloo is finished. And if you notice any of the callaloo stuck to the bottom of the pot like this, trust and believe this is a good thing, because this is real flavor. So you just want to scrape it and incorporate all that back into the dish. All that is great flavor. And you can already see that everything melt down. It's looking like if we already start to swizzle the callaloo, and that's because we took our time and prepped the ingredients the way that they need to be prepped. So I have my swizzle stick here. Now, just gonna put it in and swizzle to add the finishing touches to our callaloo. And that's it there, Less than 5 minutes of swizzling and we're good to go. We have the perfect consistency here. This is the texture that we're looking for. For me, this is the perfect callaloo. So this is the consistency callaloo that I love. Something that's not too runny, not too soupy. You ain't get no pieces of the stalk, no pieces of the leaves. Everything just kind of come together. You could still see the okra seeds. And for me, that is the mark of a great callaloo. A little bit of sweetness. And again, that from the onions and the pumpkin. As a matter of fact, from all the veggies that we saute, really bring out the flavors of the veggies. And then you have the rosemary in there. Real nice perfume to the callaloo. And of course, the hot pepper, the Scotch bonnet pepper, bringing a little heat. So it's a perfect balance of savory spicy, and a hint of sweetness from sauteing the veggies. For me, that is a perfect callaloo. So if you want to make this, check out the recipe in the video description. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.